Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church, where our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and pursue the common good. We welcome you in your brokenness and in your wholeness. No matter who you have been, who you are, or who you are becoming, we greet you today with love. And today, Nathan Boone will be reading our chalice lighting.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to say the words while Rhea lights the chalice for us, because we're a two-person team here, but we light the chalice as a symbol of our sacred time together. The burning chalice represents the light of reason and science, the warmth of loving community, the cleansing heat of justice.
Change is part of our nature, a guarantee that can be seen in the clouds, something that can be caught in the motion of poetry. Percy Bysshe Shelley wrote, quote, "I bring fresh showers for the thirsting flowers from the seas and the streams. I bear light shade for the leaves when laid in their noonday dreams. From my wings are shaken the dews that waken the sweet buds, every one, when rocked to rest on their mother's breast as she dances about the sun. I wield the flail of lashing hail and whiten the green plains under, and then again I dissolve it in rain and laugh as I pass in thunder." End quote. Let us worship together. Our opening hymn will be "Do Not Leave Your Cares." I will share my screen in just a moment.
To forgiveness and transfer cares at the door. Do not leave them there when you come into this place. Be open to forgiveness and transformation. Come on in, you are welcome here. And do not leave your cares at the door. Oh, bring your pain and sorrow and joy. There's a place for them upon the altar of life. Be open to forgiveness and transformation. Come on in, you are welcome here. And do not leave your cares at the door. This is a place of grace, place of losing and finding our way upon the winding road. Meeting and parting, stumbling and starting over. Every story is sacred here, even yours, even yours. So come on in and do not leave your cares at the door. Do not leave them there when you come into this place. Be open to forgiveness and transformation. Come on in, you are welcome in. Come in and do not leave your cares at the door. Amen. Amen. Amen.
Change can be chaos, leaving us unprotected, not knowing where our efforts can be directed. Our faith at times goes undetected as we walk into the fight. Change can be chaos, but change is not an adversary, merely a witness to our lives unwary of implications merely arbitrary, in search of future's light. The past 2 years have probably included enough change for the entire lifetimes for all of us, and for ourselves as well, which will probably make more sense if we hit this button here. Hi. Most of you know us and will continue to know us only as Chris, and you're not wrong. But for us, part of the change of these past few years was discovering another part of ourself as well. It has come with its adjustments. Lord knows we can still not do makeup well. And in truth, this may never be something we can embrace outside of a virtual environment. Maybe we just took the pandemic trend of dyeing our hair a little too far. I'm not sure. But it was another and long series of changes for all of us. We began changing the way we work as the pandemic chipped away at our businesses. We adjusted to the virtual environments and the loss of music in our lives for those of us who like to sing. We saw those we care about come into our lives and others slip away, and some change, not always seemingly for the better. But then better for whom? The loss of someone from our life might mean they go on to be where they are meant to play their part in this world, and we would never want to stand in that way. Change can hurt, and there have been a few. Betrayal by a close friend, the rejection of a mother, seeking help during a crisis and finding only trauma. Change can be devastating. We see it in the signs daily as the change of our climate begins to show its effects. Change can be healing, acknowledging parts of our own identity that previously we couldn't, finding forgiveness for the wrongs of our past, even if ourselves are the hardest ones to forgive sometimes. Change can be slow, the climb up a mountain to where we truly believe we can reach, a skill we're trying to learn, the person we wish we could become. And change can be sudden, like stepping off a cliff or cutting away something that brings us pain or takes from us our sense of self. And still sometimes that is what the world needs. With our own journey, we found that inertia was our greatest opponent. That first step towards any change, and once we'd begin, the momentum would carry us forward whether we wanted it to or not. We cannot say we always embrace change. Some changes we fight with our last ounce of strength, and others we have welcomed openly. And both have led to happiness and both have led to sorrow. We will try and navigate the passages ahead more successfully than those we've left behind. Accept that there is change we need, change the world needs, and change which will still draw tears from us all as we cling to what feels safe. What feels right, who knows? May we create change. May we accept change. May we work for change. May we survive change. Allow change. And sometimes may we be change. And I get to read the offering. Sorry. Every Sunday, we take an offering. All cash and designated checks from that offering go to external nonprofit organizations doing good work in our community. This Change for Change partner this month is Freedom Oklahoma. Freedom Oklahoma works to secure lived equality and legal protection for lesbians, gays, bisexuals, transgender, and queer people through advocacy, public education, coalition building, and empowerment in the civic process. You may wish to make your donation, use a credit card through our website, or this could be a time to find your checkbook, write out a check, and put it aside to mail to First Unitarian on Monday morning. Our offertory today comes to us from the Chancel Choir of First Unitarian of Oakland and is I Know This Rose Will Open. Let today's offering reflect our highest aspiration for the works of this church in the world.
Please join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer. Spirit of life and of love, let us take a breath together and notice how it feels your body, providing blessed oxygen, and then exhale. Recognize our bodies have been through much. They have changed, but yet they still remain giving us the breath of life. Let us think of the ways our minds have grown with new ideas and matured with time. How it remains the creator and storer of our passions and memories. Let us take another breath in and out, recognizing that we miraculously get to be transformed every time we awake, even if it seems to be the most mundane of days. We are a mosaic of every day we have been experienced and have been gifted in this life. And every day we get to add something new, whether we know it or not. And Spirit, how blessed that we each get to contribute to the ways we change. Amen, and blessed be. Good morning once again. My name is Rhea Brown Bright. My pronouns are they, them, theirs. And today I will be offering the homily. It is hard to recognize not only growth within ourselves, but the change that comes with it. What does it mean to be transformed? To be accepting of new parts of your life that were never there before? To face the unfamiliar when current comforts that have kept you grounded for so long are gone? These are questions I am not just asking you, but ones I have been frequently asking myself over the past few months or even the past year. We can be transformed in so many ways. I believe that certain seasons of life lead to more noticeable shifts. Right now, in this moment, the major changes in my life are clear to me. They are nameable. I graduated from OU, and soon I will be going to grad school in Boston. Those are the easy changes to name. And I think many of us can find comfort in those type of transformative moments, because we clearly see them coming. However, within big changes, there are hundreds of small changes that impact every aspect of your life that in many ways are much harder to come to terms with. Yet, I think many of us had to accept so many small changes within just this past year because of one big one. We collectively experienced COVID and the changes that came with that, but in those big changes, did we note all the small ones? Did we take time to notice the ways in which we individually changed, in which we grew? I think for many of us within this duration, there has been a lot of time for reflection. We have found joy in things that maybe we hadn't considered before. Maybe it was in virtual game or movie nights, or getting to see a friend you used to see all the time, but had to be a part of because of physical distancing. Or maybe you learned you had a new passion or a new hobby, or rekindled an old one. I know for me, I took joy in the practice of writing letters, making earrings, and reigniting my love for comic books. But also has been a time of stress. And stress has a way of impacting the body, not just emotionally, but physically. I know I experienced that stress and how I navigate the world, that it made what once was easy so much harder. It informed the smallest of decisions and sometimes made me feel like I was missing out. And I think because of that, one of the hardest things I had to come to terms with is that I have undeniably changed in the course of undergrad and the course of just this last year alone. Maybe on some level, it would have been easier to have remained in stagnation, to not find new passions or new fears, to not develop new ways of understanding the world or having friendships change in one way or the other. But the reality is no human is a stagnant pool of water. We are constantly flowing and often feeding into one another, creating environments that nourish each other in particular ways. Yet it is easy to occasionally wish that nothing would ever change. But change is inevitable. And recognizing that change for me felt impossible or not worth it because so much of it occurred in a time of collective trauma across the world. How were these parts of me that had changed to be recognized when it seemed that everything else around us was so much bigger, so much more important? How do you mark the end of something that has shifted who you fundamentally are as a person in a way that recognizes not just the accomplishment, but the person I had become at the end of it? Especially when the accumulation of those small changes can be terrifying. Sometimes change means loss, and loss is not always horrible, and it doesn't necessarily have to be scary, but that does not mean it is easy. And I know so many of us had to experience milestones that included some type of loss in a way that maybe felt less visible than normal. But know that you are not alone in that experience, and that every part of who you were then and who you are now are equally worth having those milestones and moments acknowledged. I ask you for a moment to think to yourselves the ways you've grown, milestones you've reached, and things that may have been lost along the way because of change. Imagine for a moment the spaces you found joy in growing up. Are they still there? Do the structures of them still remain? I know sometimes I find myself driving or walking past places I loved as a kid, or near areas I used to live, and a lot of the time, those places are still there, or the structure has homed something new, but it feels different. It doesn't hold the same meaning it once did to me. I imagine many of you have had similar experiences, for it is part of life. Maybe it is because we are different people and don't see it through the same eyes. Or it was a place that you once knew every inch of, but can't even be certain it is the same on the inside anymore. Or maybe it is because new buildings have sprung up around the place you used to know so well, and well, it just looks different. But when you look at it, the structure is the same. Or at the very least, you know the soil that underlies it all cannot have changed too much. The land is still the blessed land at the end of the day. In an episode of Adventure Time, there's a song feature called Everything Stays. The chorus containing the words, everything stays, right where you left it. Everything stays, but it still changes. And when I look out into the world or at myself, I know those words to be an undeniable truth. Places I once loved have stayed. People I love have stayed. But everything still has changed. And change is not always the most obvious thing. Things can stay and become different. And on some level, that's okay, but it doesn't mean it's easy. Because once we recognize how the things that were once a comfort to us no longer hold the same purpose it once did, it does allow for new joys and new comforts to take place, allows for us to be truly transformed. I find I often like reading stories about transformation. In Alice Isn't Dead by Joseph Fink, one of the ideas that is explored is how you can be transformed by your desire to transform the world. And in thinking about how individual growth can occur in part because of the world around us, I can say I have seen many of us want to transform the world. And maybe it can be best summed up by one of the characters in the books who states, we're all just people fighting for an idea of what living as humans should be like. And how we change, whether that be in our beliefs or in how we approach things, and the events we organize, the places we visit, all of that is contributing to this idea we each personally hold of how to make the world a little better. We might not always recognize that the changes that occur in our life include what we are motivated by in the moment, because, well, it just seems so natural. Change is sneaky like that. It appears even when you think you were the same person you were when you were awoke. However, when I look at the rest of nature, how could I ever expect for me or for any of you not to be changed a little bit every day when we experience new things each day? I have never awoken to one sunrise that looked the same as the days before, or seen one sunset that was not unique, yet the sun rises and sets in the same places. It stays and we don't perceive it as a major change, but the fact the sky is painted with different colors every morning and night is incredible. There are some days when so many of us look at the sky and think how beautiful those orange tones are, and we can't help but all take a picture and want to post it on our social medias because we know the same sunset won't exist tomorrow. We don't fear that change. We don't ignore it. We view it as truly remarkable because it is. What if we allow for the small transformations of self to be viewed just as incredibly? For each new sight we take in to bring a second of each new sight that we take in that brings a second of joy, for every tight hug of a friend and small task accomplished, to be seen as things that are contributing to us changing and to our growth, that it is as unique and incredible as the setting or rising sun. However, it must be acknowledged that transformation is not always joyous. And when positive change happens, it should be celebrated. But we also need to make room for stress, sorrow, and the trauma so many of us have experienced. For those moments can shift how we look at the world just as much as any other major change. And sorrow tends to come with just as many small losses that can be hard to process. For many, there has not been the room to grieve in the ways we normally would. Healing in some ways has become more complicated in a world still stuck in a pandemic. But if we think back to that idea of how we are all just trying to make the world a little better for our fellow humans, so much of how we change is connected right to that, even in how we approach grief. Everything may stay in some form or the other, but just because it remains does not mean we still feel the connection. It does not mean it is tangible to us anymore. Like I said earlier, change is easier when you're expecting it. And we have experienced so much unexpected change. And the change tied deeply to grief can feel like the unexplored parts of the ocean, deep and unknowable. But when we allow ourselves to recognize that we are always changing, that deep well and unknowable source of grief becomes slightly more manageable. And it can become known that maybe this will change too, that healing can be possible with time, that the love of community is not as hidden as we may think on occasion. Healing doesn't happen in solitude, and neither does change. So when I go back to those questions I started with, and how to deal with transformation and accepting new versions of ourselves, I find maybe the simplest answer is to look outside. The sky is never the same on any given day, and each season allows for different plants to flourish. We celebrate it and we stare at its beauty. Transformation is common. And so each day I remind myself, even if I am in a phase of my life where everything is about to change, or I'm about to lose the familiarity of the only state I have ever lived in, of having those I love super close to me, if everything around me naturally experiences change, it only makes sense, so do I. And I know that even with all these changes, everything truly does stay in some form or the other, even if it is only in memory. So I ask you to remind yourself that change is part of our nature, as it is for the wide open sky that we so often stare at in beauty. So take a moment tonight and look at the setting sun and remind yourself you can change as much each day as much as the sun does. Thank you. Amen and blessed be. Our closing hymn will be There's a River Flowing.
There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind, and it's telling me that somebody, there's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul, and it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul.
I now invite Nathan to say the words to extinguish our chalice, and I'll actually blow it out.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of love and community which burns in our hearts.
Think of the clouds in the sky. To once again quote Percy Bysshe Shelley, I am the daughter of earth and water and the nursling of the sky. I pass through the pores of the ocean shores. I change, but I cannot die. For after the rain, with never a stain, the pavilion of heaven is bare. And the winds and sunbeams in their convex gleams build up the blue domes of air. I silently laugh at my own cenopath, and out of the cavern of rain, like a child from the womb, like a ghost from the tomb, I arise and unbuild it again. Thank you for joining our worship today. I will be putting the postlude up for Blue Boat Home, and feel free to stay as long as you would like until the song is over, and I'll see you all during coffee hour.